Welcome to the Founders Edition. We mic up with founders, investors, and advisors behind the most successful software companies on the planet. We are here to showcase the most effective mechanisms for sales go-to-market and dispel the myths around the best practice for the modern world. We are Hunters and Unicorns.
So how do you validate? You need to start with the user. So you use the jobs to be done, pains, gains, and etc. to actually understand the users, right? You need to talk to them a lot. So for us, we've always worked with end customers. Even today, we are a platform, but every year we are 3 co-founders. We actually work together on at least one customer and for that customer. So we will still, I wouldn't say that bootstrapping is good for everyone at all situations, because sometimes, if you are racing against the time and market is ready and your value proposition is all set, then it makes definitely sense to scale as fast as possible. But for us, when we started and we did the worldly mapping and we talked to customers, part of our hypothesis was that it's gonna take 3 to 4 years for the world to go through the unbundling cycle and to start to see the problems. Very early on, people hate, in our part of the world, hate to sell something which is not done, proven, battle tested. But you are not gonna build a fast moving company like that because it takes time and it needs validation, right? So for us, I think there are on the diffusion of technology, like the crossing the chasm and stuff. You need to understand what types of customers you have to sell once you have a finished product, and what types of customers you can actually sell, with the basics of the product and have them as part of the journey of building the product. So I believe that the founders and CEO and the whole basic leadership needs to be very hands-on, because if you are not, you don't understand how necessary it is, like the Eisenhower metrics of prioritization, like urgent, not urgent, important, not important. Mm-hmm. You then tend not to understand when something is, urgent and important and really needs to shift, right? We started to then, a year ago, Snowflake actually came to us and say, guys, we love your tech. You're great people. You just suck at selling. Like, yeah, thanks. You're right. Thanks, you're right. How can you help us, right? Yeah. Well, talk to this guy. He will teach you, right? So
that was Ollie Krebs.
Yes. It's like 13 months, 14 months ago. Ollie came, and, started to consult with us, help us. And, wow, this is how you do it. Oh, interesting, right? And we started to understand, because we went through that experience trying to build ourselves, we started to understand why some things worked and some deals worked and some didn't. I would say the biggest thing we needed to learn is that it's a team sport. And looking back, all of the successful deals, large ones like Erste Bank, were a team sport.
Welcome to Hunters and Unicorns, the Founders Edition. Today we welcome Pavel Dolezal. Pavel is a Czech entrepreneur, a multi-time founder that has a background in technical, consulting, and venture investments. This unique blend provides an interesting foundation to Pavel's current role as the CEO and co-founder of a disruptive bootstrap startup called Keboola. Keboola's headquarters in Admir and is gaining a huge affinity in the cloud data management space. In this episode, he provides us a step-by-step insight into the journey so far. We explore the importance of having a market hypothesis and the continuous process of validation. He walks us through the founder's role in the early stages. We talk about the power of communities for stimulating awareness and design partnerships, and the theory of MEDDIC compared to the reality of its application. This is his playbook.
Welcome to Hunts and Unicorns. I'm Simon Kutis and I'm joined by my co-host Ollie Kune.
Welcome back to the show, everyone.
And it's an absolute pleasure to be joined by Pavel Dolezal. Pavel, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's like really pleasure. I love it here. The paintings and everything. It's awesome.
A little bit crazy, but
I like crazy.
A reflection on all three of us, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to find out more because you are actually building a very, very disruptive startup, Keboola. Just really, well, you're actually in a scale-up mode at the moment, but you are currently CEO. And the title that you wanted us to introduce you as is the CEO that's hiring the best team that he possibly can, the best team in the world. So we're really looking forward to really understanding more about, some of these amazing initiatives that you're going after. But actually, Pavel, it's a really unique story because, we see lots of companies coming from the West Coast. There's lots of companies, emerging out of places like Tel Aviv. But actually, Keboola was born out of Eastern Europe. So just tell us a little bit more about, the beginnings and why we are actually seeing a kind of a change in the market right now with companies like Keboola and others that are also kind of emerging out of that part of the world.
That's a great question. Thanks for that. So for me, it was kind of like you have to understand that we had a velvet revolution, right, 30 years ago now, but it always takes some time for things to change. So for me, Keboola is my third venture. We started, internet portals in late 90s. We scaled them through Eastern Europe. Awesome. Sold it to Warburg and Pincus, and it was like great tech, right? A lot of data, a lot of machine learning. Then we actually said, well, let's do something bigger. And we actually built a largest performance media company trying to scale the business systems as well. So within a year, we had 5 million ARR, 15,000 clients, working globally. Great, sold the company, had kids, and then started to do angel investment. And angel investment is nice, but I love to build, right? So, it's a different DNA, right? And so I've always tried to encourage people in our part of the world to go beyond the borders, right? And it was very hard actually first 15 years. People were scared to go outside of Czech, Slovak, Poland, because of the different cultural aspects and everything. But nowadays, a lot of people actually lived abroad. They studied abroad, right? Or they worked for international companies, or they work for successful startups as product board, for example, and they graduated out of them and now starting their companies and like, oh, we love the tech talent in Czech Republic or Slovak or Poland, right? And we want to build there because of tech, because of the product understanding, but we understand that we need to scale it kind of like the UK-US style, right? And in places like Estonia, for example, it's so small or Slovak that you can't build anything for the local market. It's just too small, right? So you need to build for outside. And I was very fortunate. I was actually studying in US 94, 95. So for me, it was always logical to build for English-speaking world. Yeah.
That's incredible. And so obviously, with that in mind, so you started Keboola. Was it something that you came up with by design? Was it a moment in time? How did that happen? Just take us to the genesis of how Keboola actually happened.
So after I exited 2 companies and started in angel investment, I was like, once I decided I want to build again, I was purposely looking for several attributes. I was looking for a great team, great co-founders, because like my 2 previous companies I've been part of were awesome. But some of them actually had, you didn't think in 98, when internet started about what is the co-founder, gonna be like, and how long you can be with them, how you're gonna need to be solving problems, right? You just want to do it, right? So with Keboola, before Keboola, I was like, yeah, I am old enough to actually to do something not for 4 years, but I want to do something for 15, 20 years, right? And for that, I need to be looking for who are my co-founders, because you literally get in the bed with people and you have to stay with them. You have to, it's not rosy all the time. You will need to be solving hard issues. So I was purposely looking for people with the same kind of like moral attitude, ethical, and view of the world, right? About people, about building a company, not a startup, but building a company that actually has clients, that you actually service, etc. You understand the needs. And second, I was helping one of my investments, a company called Revolution, that was implementing Google Apps back then in 2014 in one of the large banks. And it was like, it changed the bank. And the CIO back then was like, well, I see how it's changing how people operate here, but I need to have data to analyze how they operate. So I would like to take data from Google Calendar, from Oracle database to understand how people work on projects, some CSV file. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome. We can do it. Both of my previous companies were data heavy, right? So no problem. Give me 12 people, 12 months. I was like, are you crazy? This is like some IBM shit, like you preach cloud and then I'll give you 3 months, 3,000 euros. I was like, wow, challenge accepted. So I was looking like literally everywhere. I couldn't find anything that would kind of like do it, right? So somebody recommended Peter Šimeček, my co-founder. I met with him, and back then they were actually they were migrating companies into cloud, like they were taking care of Red Bull, etc. And we met together, and he said, yeah, we can do this. It's like we sign an NDA, and I share with him, the accesses, and 6 hours later it was done.
6 hours later?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, it was midnight. At midnight, I remember I was, like watching TV with my wife, scrolling emails, I kind of like, I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. And I was like, how did you do that? I was like, yeah, I'm using visualization tool called Good Data. I'm like, I don't care about visualization. Today we would say, how did you build the data platform, right? He was like, well, we have this internal tool. I was like, oh, internal tool. Interesting. Tell me more. It was like, well, here is a GitHub link, like github.com/Keboola. So I looked through it, and next morning I came to their office and never left. And about the design, for the first year and a half, we were going around the world. We went to Silicon Valley. We went to see, a lot of my previous contacts, customers. We were trying things. We did huge hackathons for 500 people, like with universities, and like data hackathons. And we were trying to understand how is the data world and the whole world gonna evolve. And so over those year and a half, 2 years, we have formulated a hypothesis, which went like this: the world is moving into algorithm-driven world, where every process that can be automated will be automated using data and AI, and more, these AI agents will talk to each other. And our vision was, if you look at stock exchange, most of the trades are automated. If you look in advertising, most of the things are automated, right? Software speaking software. And we were like, wow, this is gonna just continue, A. B, there's only 5 companies in the world, like Netflix, Facebook, that can do it internally. And there's tens of millions of companies who just don't know how to do it, right? So you need to kind of like simplify for them. Then we looked at technological trends, and we analyzed last 30 years, like how is the trends, they're going. And there is a cycle. There is bundling together and unbundling, and then bundling, and kind of like moves up, and there's an emerging behavior, right? So like you have your hard drive, you have a memory, boom, somebody creates S3 service in Amazon, and suddenly, boom, all the emerging behavior, SaaS tools and everything, right? So we're like, okay, now what we see is that one era, the Hadoop era, kind of like is ending, and Oracle. And we saw the emergence of new data warehouses, Redshift, Snowflake. We're like, well, there's going to be a huge unbundling of old stack. And there's going to be dozens of tools. Today we would call it a modern data stack, which are going to be, around Snowflake, around BigQuery, around Redshift. And we're like, oh, but as people will want to use data in every business department, not only in IT and data science, they will need to change how easy it is to use all those tools. So like, oh, okay, it's a similar situation as with your iPhone or your PC. You have different components like hard drive. You have memory. You have applications, and there is one thing in the middle called operating system that binds it all together and makes it work seamlessly. Like you had a great analogy, like with the telephone operators, right?
That's right. Yeah, the old
patches.
patching. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like what the world looks still now in the modern data stack, right? You want something, patch me through this, patch this technology together with this technology. And we envisioned in 2017, 16, that there's going to be one layer which is going to be loosely integrating all the different, tools, Snowflake, BigQuery, integration into one environment and orchestrating all of this together. And that, for us, that's been Keboola. We built an API layer, started to build it 2016, 17. In 2018, we incorporated the Keboola Industries and said, this is our way. And we knew we had to wait, right? Because it's the world was not there. So it gave us 3 years that we could develop, towards our vision.
Well, from obviously you've spoken about a hypothesis that you're having at this moment in time. How what was your process in validating that hypothesis?
Great. So first we looked for a framework on how to test and how to think about this hypothesis, right? So there's all the Boston, matrices and SWOT analysis and ODA loops, awesome. But it kind of was like different pieces. So very early on, we discovered an English guy named Simon Wardley. And he, you spent like 2 hours talking about him, right? I love him. He was in a similar situation 15 years ago, or 10 years before us. And he was like, I'm a tech guy. I like to think in algorithms and strategy, business strategy, it was done by people who don't think in systems. So he connected all the different systems into Wordly mapping. And it's kind of like a very nice framework, which starts with the user. So how do you validate? You need to start with the user. So you use the jobs to be done, pains, gains, and etc. to actually understand the users. Right? You need to talk to them a lot. So for us, we've always worked with end customers. Even today, we are a platform, but every year we are 3 co-founders. We actually work together on at least one customer and for that customer. So we would still understand the daily problems, right? And so once you have the user needs, for us, we identified 2 high-level needs. One of them was understanding the data, so analytics, insights. And the second one was automating actions, right? Once you understand, you want to automate. So taking data, insights, actions, right? And then, so what do I need to understand data? Well, I need clean data together. What do I need for that? Well, I need probably somewhere to put it together, so warehouse it. And you kind of peel the needs as an onion, right? So all the way down to electricity, if you want. And then you're like, okay, so each component in that user chain, how developed is it? Is it just R&D? Or is it hard to implement, but people can do it? Or is it already utility? Yeah, so you build this map, kind of evolutionary pressures, and you see, okay, interesting. So 2016 for us was okay, so warehousing is now moving into product from, before Hadoop, you had a lot of people managing, right, assembly. This is moving here, this here. It's okay, this makes sense. And so it gives you, there is a natural pressure that everything moves from R&D to utility. Think electricity, anything, right? So you can think how things are gonna be moving. And then we start to work with clients. We start to do implementations ourselves before we start to build partner network. So we would really understand. Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
I know you're probably going to be burning to ask the same question here, but that process of validation, so as and when you're working, first of all, how do you choose a customer that you want to help you validate? And what is then that process of validation?
That is a great question. So I would like to say that there is some very sophisticated framework when you are starting. If there is, please let me know. Everybody talks about, hey, let's not throw spaghetti on the wall, like let's. I actually don't think it's healthy in the beginning, because like if you go, let me say, there are two different approaches. Either you come from some vertical, like you've been working in finance for HSBC for 20 years and you understand that there's one problem, right? So then you validate it, right? You go and you solve that specific problem. Or you think you come from general problem, you've experienced that problem yourself, like we have, right? And you are trying to, you understand that you can building general purpose technology, but when, at least us, we were looking like, what is the first use case? What is the first, kind of like, where do we start, right? Because like operating system, you can use computer for, anything, right? And the same is with Keboola. It's an operating system for data, so whatever you do, yeah, but it's not helpful while building business. It's like, yeah, Facebook started in, like hot or not, basically in Harvard. So then it started, right? So to your question, we tried in the first 2 years when we were formulating this and making sure that it actually will work. We tried different things. We reached out, we went out, we reached out to people, we reached out, cold call. We actually started to do a lot of events, for data community back then in London, in Prague, and we just started to talk to people. And we were very fortunate that one of our first customers was a guy by name Tomáš Čuper, who is quite special. He is one of the most brilliant business minds. He built, back in the times of Groupons, he built the most successful Groupon clone in 6 countries of Europe, which was profitable. He then sold it to UK, and then he built for Delivery Hero company. And now he's been building a Rohlik Group, which is a fast like Ocado, but in 6 countries in Europe, and he delivers within 2 hours. And so he's been really one of the first, foundational transformational customers for us. And he said, I don't want to run the systems. No ops people, right? It needs to run itself. He's technical in business, so he helped us to he challenged us, he helped us to do this. And we understood that we are very good as Keboola in taking complex things and simplifying them for the end user. So we said, okay, this is interesting. This, kind of like a retail combination, physical and virtual, like a lot of supply chain marketing, customer service is our very, very good niche. We started to go after that. Then we acquired a customer called Mall Group, which, did consolidation. They purchased 30 different e-commerce in 6 countries. They had 10 different technologies. They went down to Tableau and Keboola. They 10-folded number of use cases and people within a year. Like, interesting. Then we started to work with Firehouse Subs in US, because we're like, hey, like everything we say about, like our CFO says, our core customers are people who have large CRM and large logistics or ERP, kind of like, right? So two different large systems that need to work together. And so we said, well, this characteristics is very similar to fast food operations in US. So we started to work with a company in UK called Forth, which do, like software for all Wagamama and, like that. They're using Keboola. Then we started to work in US with Firehouse Subs. They started to grow, like into thousands of operations, and they do all that on Keboola. And then we said, well, it's actually interesting. And what have we built? And we found out that because we changed the architecture, our operating system, we basically manage the cloud resources for data workflows, has all the governance and security. It's easy to use by business people and tech. Like, who can use that? Like financial services. So we started proactively go after banks, and we found out that there is a huge fit, because all the financial services, customers, they want to go to cloud. They want to have self management, data management for people in business. but they don't know how to scale. They don't want to repeat the Hadoop story where, to service 20 users in business, they had to have 150 IT people, right? So it started to be really good, and we started to go to large banks like Erste Bank, and it was purposefully driven. So the first we threw some spaghetti, we formulated some of that stack. We're like, oh, interesting. What's similar, right? And then we started to refine on that, and like 2 years ago, we formulated another hypothesis go-to-market, which said, well, this seems to be very good for MSP, managed service providers. And we started to focus on advertising industry as well, where there is a lot of large networks who actually start to do a lot of data for their customers, and they sell it as a service. And so they don't want to have 20 different tools that you need to patch through each time. They want to have an environment, one workspace which is managed, which is governed, and has all the things from integration, data science, and changing. So I think you get better and better as you start to do it. And we always look for new clues, new kind of like go-to-markets. And we try to really test it with customers. We always start and talk to people. I think it's the first step. But then we go and we aren't asking people, how do you like it? But how much are you willing to pay for it?
Yeah.
Because if you ask people if they like it, I love it, it's lovely. How much are you willing to pay for it? That really show me the money.
So the fact that you're bootstrapped, obviously, did that afford you the ability to be more patient rather than chasing revenue, to really kind of see the right angles and, who else cares about it? Really ask that question. It's really great we found this use case, but who else cares? Is that something that has been afforded to you because you've been bootstrapped, or is it the opposite? You need to get to revenue quicker because you're bootstrapped. It'd be really good to understand that.
I wouldn't say that bootstrapping is good for everyone at all situations, because sometimes, like if you are racing against the time and market is ready and your value proposition is all set, then it makes definitely sense to scale as fast as possible. But for us, when we started and we did the worldly mapping and we talked to customers, we part of our hypothesis was that it's gonna take 3 to 4 years for the world to go through the unbundling cycle and to start to see the problems. Like very early on, we were one of the first partners of Snowflake, right? Like 2015, I think. And they said, well, we talked to them and like, what is your problem and your customer's problem? Oh, we need to get data to Snowflake, right? Like, yeah, but it's just part of the problem, right? What are customers gonna do next? We don't care about this. Just get the data in Snowflake, right? Like, yeah, it's a great problem, and great companies like Fivetran, have been built around it. But for us, it was not our problem. Part of our hypothesis was that the integration part is gonna be a commodity, and you can see it now, right? And so for us, we originally thought it's gonna take 3 years for the world to catch up with our idea how it should be done. So we got a lot of offers, actually, a lot of inbound. But we said we don't want to get funded because we've seen a lot of companies around us who got funded very early on, and then it was hard for them to pivot or to wait, right? Pivot, VCs understand pivot. That can be done. But it's hard to have a hypothesis that you can like show and say it's gonna take 3 years, because it never gonna take 3 years. It took us 6 years, before the world started to go that way. So, and they are not the most patient with that, right? Of course, right? So if they have 5-year investment horizon, then you cannot wait 6 years. So for us, it was a good decision, I believe. It allowed us to work on our platform. It allowed us to work with smaller number of clients. It allowed us to not to sell in the first couple of years, but to have very strong referrals. And it allowed us to build a very strong culture, internally. We are around 80 people, and over 50 people have been working together for more than 5 years.
Wow.
So that's very strong, I think, and it hopefully allows us to actually being able now to scale faster, because now the time is good for us. It's our hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
Because like if you look at the what happened with Corona, we accelerated 5 to 10 years in digital transformation, and yeah,
True, yeah.
and everybody understands the problem. You know, even large players like Microsoft started to build data fabric, right? And it's just a cloud management, level that you integrate things, and that's awesome for us because it validates our market positioning. So yeah.
We've had I think there's a bit of a mix of opinions. Those first customers that you're working with when you're going through that validation of your hypothesis, were they paid customers? Or
Of course,
were they,
only money.
Yeah.
We are building a business,
Yeah.
and as you said, we were bootstrapped, so we couldn't afford not to have unpaid customers.
Yeah.
We were doing, gradual step up, but everybody, how would you validate if it makes sense if people are not willing to pay for it?
Yeah. So at that point of validation, of asking for money, how complete is the product? At what point is your product development at a point of, I'll go with the question.
No.
Sorry.
I think it's so this is probably one of the problems why historically you haven't seen too many companies, coming from Eastern Europe. I don't know if you ever seen that wave of there's a distribution of if you go to US and you ask person like, how are you? Oh, it's really awesome, right? If you go to England, it's different, but if you go to Eastern Europe, like, fucking bad, right? But objectively, the person is still in the same spot, right? Yeah. So and especially coming from engineering technical backgrounds, people hate, in our part of the world, hate to sell something which is not done, proven, battle tested. But you are not gonna build a fast moving company like that because it takes time and it needs validation, right? So for us, I think there are on the diffusion of technology, the crossing the chasm and stuff. You need to understand what types of customers you have to sell once you have a finished product, and what types of customers you can actually sell, with the basics of the product and have them as part of the journey of building the product. So like Tomáš Čupr and his colleague, he was so happy that we don't have, set product. Because if he would be looking for, product which is done, tested, has a SOC 2 type 2 back then, we have it now, but, all the ISOs, he would have chosen, like IBM or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But he was building a new type of company. So he needed a partner who is willing to change with him. So for him, it was okay that we are 30% of the main capabilities and we are willing to build on that. On the other hand, there are some customers, like now we are working for one of the largest world companies who builds logistics centers. Mm-hmm. And for them, they are very traditional. So they use part of the platform that have been tested, battle tested many years, but anything new, they're like, oh yeah, we like it, but, right? So it's, and also we are learning that as well. So it depends on company and on your stakeholders. Yeah. Because like the other company I've been talking about, it's like there's a CIO who is very proactive, but the company is not, so and yeah. Yeah.
And so with that in mind, when your personal, involvement in this, in your journey, how involved are you in this part of the process?
I think it's one of the parts I love the most.
Yeah.
You know, I love to come up with new solutions, uncover new issues that our clients have, and I think like as you said, there are different schools of thought. I believe that in such a fast changing environment, which is new, like the data has been last couple of years and will be next 10 to 15 years, I believe that the founders and CEO and the whole basic leadership needs to be very hands-on. Because like if you are not, you don't understand how necessary it is, like the Eisenhower metrics of prioritization, like urgent, non-urgent, important, not important. You then tend not to understand when something is, urgent and important and really needs to shift, right? And you might be going like too slow, with, like, oh, we need to make it perfect. So it took us some time as well, and we started to understand that you can't have like the whole discussions. Should you have Six Sigma, Agile, or Lean? Just tools, right? So like you need to apply them in the good things. And if you are not hands-on, you might push the whole dev team into everything needs to be Six Sigma. Yes, on the platform level for us, right? So like once that feature is done and cemented, it really can't break because we are working with clients' data. Yeah? But when you are testing new things, like we've been last 9 months data apps, like you want to be very agile, right? And for that, you need to be, like I feel that CEO needs to be close to it, not running it, because like there are different duties. But if you are adding big part into your product or platform, you really need to understand it, because like you have the same language as product people, and then you can help to translate to salespeople and to marketing people, right? And yeah, it's not a HSBC, like we are building a software company.
In terms of one of the things that we've spoken about previously.
So did I answer a question?
Absolutely did. Yeah.
I sometimes have a tendency to go just off.
No, you were absolutely on point. Absolutely on point. It's really interesting.
Yeah. In terms of our previous discussion, you spoke about the importance of knowing where to focus your energy. What do you need to reinvent? What do you automate, especially as a founder? Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's quite relevant, kind of dovetailing from what you've just mentioned there.
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question or point. I think a lot of times, if you are a kind of like a systematic, like group of people, sometimes you try to automate everything, but that can work for you, but not for everybody in the company. Because like there's a change management to everything, right? I will do a little segue to Thomas Chuper again. Like when we started with his first company, they started to use Keboola to get insights, data, and we wanted to do machine learning very fast, right? And he said, no, not yet. Like, what do you mean? But first, I need everybody to understand what is their core metric, what is their KPI, how they can influence that one KPI, how do they see it in data, and how they see in data how it's changing, right? Once they actually understand that, I need the teams to understand how interconnected their metrics are, right? And only after this, and it's gonna take months or a year or year and a half, I can start to put automation of processes. Because if I start to put machine learning for automation before that, the organization will not understand how to actually unlock the value. It will be just, oh, cool project in the R&D. And that happens so many times. You see large companies, like big PR, press release, oh, we have done AI in the, but it's a pocket. In the company, it's locked in that pocket. It doesn't change how the organization behaves as a whole. So I think there's always, like process to everything. And it doesn't make sense to automate a process which you don't fully understand, and the organization doesn't understand the burden that it actually gets. So we actually designed over the years a technique. We have our three co-founders, Milan, our co-founder from Vancouver. He and his team designed a technique we call business data modeling. And it's basically a very simplified process modeling technique, because like the all consultancy, process modeling tools are frameworks. You get a book 400 pages. Like, who's gonna right? Like in hiring, top grading, right? Top grading was a great methodology which no one could use, So they simplified to who methodology, right? So he basically takes people from business and IT together, and he starts to ask them, hey, so what data do you need? Like, let's say you are selling concerts, right? It's like, so what is the end product? Oh, we have data in ticketing. No. Like, what is the end goal? Oh, it's people coming to the concert. Okay, perfect. So what do they have? Oh, I need to know their name, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what is before that? You said you need to buy a ticket. Where, right? And you basically map the main processes throughout the organization, and you don't care where the data lives or what technological stack, right? And then you take people together and do you understand how this influences this or not, right? And it's very interesting when you talk to people. Like for some clients, we developed this, and then we started to work with board -1. And for one client, we did 60 to 80 different, now our partners do it, but 60 to 80 different workshops, and always ask them, what is your KPI? What is the metric that actually describes who are you dependent on? Who do you serve? How does it, is in the map of business data modeling? And only once you understand that, they actually start to see where the pains are. You can see the choke points, and you can address that, and then you can automate that.
I think you're stepping into a bit of the sales motion that you've got in play here. How have you gone about validating the right sales motion, whether it's a top-down, bottom-down, or product-led growth?
That's a tricky question. I don't think we found this sales motion which would work forever as the best. I think it changes with the stage of the company and the market. Very early on, we actually did try, cold calling and going, like connecting bottom up and top down, and nothing worked as much as, really just creating communities and helping people, and then referrals. So we grew to 5 million, by basically referrals, right? And taking care of the users, not only users but also the stakeholders. If you would go that big, champions, and coaches, and not only users, right? And so when we started, we tried to sell. I was like, we need to sell. We need to do AdWords, right? We need to do everything. Nothing kind of worked. We're yeah, too early. Let's try. Let's focus on showing people what they can do with data. So we actually got together with women in tech groups, and we designed with Dita Přikrylova from Czech IT girls. It's an organization they have in Czech, and we designed a data course with them, and it was a very 1 day, 2 days data course where women learn how to work with data. And we were originally designed for young women in school. Then it started, women who actually are at maternity leave and want to come back and change. And we were able to teach them with our partners. We started to invite people to help. We are able to teach anybody basically how to do things like cohorts, in marketing, pretty sophisticated things in 1 day. And that kind of started to spread around the world. Now it's there is an offshoot in Asia. She Loves Data. and it's like 20, 30,000 people went through those programs, and we loved that because it was like helping, people to do something. And then it was interesting because they started to talk about it, right? And some of them went to some companies, hey, why don't you use Keboola, right? Or some companies started to use Keboola, and so like they were, oh, we are looking for someone who knows how to do it. And now we are actually teaching at 2 universities. They run their data courses on Keboola. The community part is a big part of what we do. But then with the sales motion, it started to evolve, right? After Corona or in Corona, we started to see a big influx of inbounds. So we started to build a product-led team. We open up Keboola as a freemium. So anybody can just like go to Keboola.com. There is a demo, 3 different use cases. You just can click it, like literally 20 minutes and you have a use case. That's been really interesting. And then we said, okay, we see we're actually going more and more larger companies as well. So we need to start to put together a enterprise sales organization. We did first trial a year and a half ago. We understood that we are probably not gonna do it right because we are learning. We learned a lot. Yeah, we did. One of the best lessons was that it's great to get your hands dirty in the beginning, but you need to understand that you are doing it to learn. And once you actually learn, it's great to look for people who are senior and who already understand. But so, we started to then a year ago, Snowflake actually came to us and say, guys, we love your tech. You're great people. You just suck at selling. I'm like, yeah, thanks. You're right. Thanks, you're right. How can you help us, right? Yeah. Like, well, talk to this guy. He will teach you, right?
So that was Ollie Krebs.
Yes. It's like 13 months, 14 months ago. Ollie came, and, started to consult with us, help us. And like, oh, this is how you do it. Oh, interesting, right? And we started to understand, because we went through that experience trying to build ourselves. We started to understand why some things worked, and some deals worked, and some didn't. And yes, it's quite straightforward if you follow the metric, where is your stakeholder map, right? Who is your champion? This guy? No, it's a coach, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, but it's like one of those things that you read the book, we read the books, but it's quite like logically easy, there's no you're not splitting an atom. But it's hard to implement because it's a practice. And if you think you understand the practice because you've read 3 books, that's not it, right? So we tried. I wouldn't say we failed, but we did. So I did say it. But we started to understand that we need help. We asked for help, and we were. I like to think that we were better material for Ollie to work with because we were not cocky, right? Like in this particular occasion, because we're like, oh yeah, we don't know anything about it. Please teach us. Yeah.
It's a bit like learning how to drive by reading a manual, right? It's very, very different. It's not until you actually get out on the road, you can have all the conceptual, but it's not until you've actually experienced it. I think that's a good way of analysing that. So obviously he has been with you now for a while as an advisor, and he is going to be joining as a kind of your CRO. But so what are the things that you've now learned that really, you've kind of alluded to some of them, but what have you had to change, and how has that also changed the mindset of the business by bringing someone like Ollie into your organization?
I would say the biggest thing we needed to learn is that it's a team sport. And looking back, all of the successful deals, large ones like Erste Bank, were a team sport. But we were a small village team, like with the soccer analogy, like kids playing around and on the field, and sometimes a lot of fun, and sometimes there is a goal, right? But you don't really know why, right? And it'll be fun, right? It's just like fun. You're outside with, and people who play with you, like, oh, that's a great game. We like your ball. And then you try to go upper, higher league, and like, it doesn't work. It breaks. Why? Okay. And then somebody like you get a great coach, like we have Oli, and he starts to show you that you need to play together as a team, right? And you're like, yeah, that's obvious, right? But you don't understand how to scale it. So for us, the biggest lesson was that it can't be dependent on me or my co-founders. Everybody like to understand the deal life cycle and at which stages of the deal, who needs to kind of like systematically, touch the deal so it's repeatable. Because our method was like, oh, there's an interesting lead, right? Let's all get together and just like, so we'll be spending in kind of like a good faith, we'll be spending so much resources and time, like in the wrong stages of the deal. Okay? And then it led to frustration. And then next deal came and be like, no, I'm not gonna help you because I just did that, like I don't have time, right? So all it taught us how to face the deals, when who should come, in, how to actually do proper metric, evaluate, if we should actually, spend the time with the deal, right? Because not everyone who comes and asks, like you should give time. So those have been the biggest learnings. And past couple of months, we've been working very hard to prepare materials, prepare the process around it. So new people, when they join, they don't take a year to understand what we do, right? Because we originally thought that everybody needs to understand everything, which I think still is a great strategy when you are starting, right? Like we have one of our colleagues, Martin Lepka, lives in London. When we started, he did everything, right? He helped us to do operations. He was selling, he was building marketing here, a community, and he could do everything himself, analytics and integrations. And we thought we need 50 people like him, but he burned out, right? So he actually left us for almost 2 years. Then he came back and he was like, I'm actually like it here. So but I learned my lessons and I'm not gonna do this, right? And to understand that in the team sport, not everybody needs to know everything, but you need to understand who is good at what and how to put the play together. That's our biggest kind of like lesson. I'm not saying we are perfect at it, but we understand that we read a manual how to drive, and we were kind of like, to use your analogy, like like previously we were like when you ride a bike, they say like the worst kind of like drivers are the ones who have 10,000 kilometers because they think they know everything, right? Because they had some success drove, but then they die the most, So
yeah.
you need another 50,000 to actually understand that.
So you've mentioned reference MEDPIC, so which is obviously the qualification methodology, or MEDIC, however it's known. But were you aware of these types of kind of sales or qualification methodologies prior to Oli, or is that something that you've had to educate yourself to recently?
Oh, we were aware. We we actually we implemented Salesforce, like before Corona, everything, but we implemented it as tech people would do. Okay. So we read all the books.
The Qualified Sales Leader and
exactly
John McMahon.
MEDPIC book and Salesforce's, like menus. We watched videos, everything, and we chose the most sophisticated, pipeline like system. So we would cover everything, right? And there was our misunderstanding that to your question about automating systems, you can't go from 0 to 100 miles per hour, like in under 1 second, like you need to, unless you have electrical cars or whatever, right? But you know what I mean, kind of. there is a you need to go slower, shift gears and go. So like if you would look at our sales force before Ole, you would think like, pretty good, like, oh, okay, but nobody knew how to use it, like, so it was a cargo cult. We thought that by implementing stages in Salesforce, integrating all the data through Keboola into Looker dashboards, it's gonna happen. But we didn't understand that's not about it. We need to start with the basics, like how do you handle, if you play soccer, right? How do you handle ball stops, turns, and then you can put the team together. But everybody needs to have the basics, and we didn't have that. We had a perfect play for the game, which we watched on TV. So we were like, oh, this is good play, like Ted Lasso, like that, right? So we implemented that, and yeah.
Could you help us just understand a little more around the structure of your go-to-market team? So your sales team in the early stage, where it is now. First of all, that's my first question, and I have another question to follow from that.
It's a tough question for me, because it's right now literally being reformed and redone as we speak. So we have a very strong go-to-market with partners, like very strong. We work with Deloitte, we work with Snowflake, we won some awards as the best solution a little bit for Snowflake. We started to work with Google, and we have a lot of partners. And that's our very, very strong go-to-market, because like we have partners like in US Questa partners, and they are a great partner because like they focus on companies, like which go through mergers and acquisitions, and they need to consolidate the data stack, and they want it. Then we start to focus on like now it's majority of our go-to-market is partners. So, for example, we started to focus on MSPs, and especially in the advertising industry, because they don't care about like 20 tools with the switchboard menu. They just want to produce the results fast for the client, so they can actually and less people they can use for that, the bigger the margin, right? So we are working now with one of the largest networks, globally Publicis Group, and it's awesome. So our go-to-market is like very revolving around partners, and we need to double down on that. A lot of our work and talks with Ole is kind of like how to double down on that. In the same time, we are big believers that for our company, and it's different for every company, we should not be only partners, right? Because like there is a value in building your own pipeline, your own connections, and bringing those to partners, because it needs to be like mutually positive relationship, because if you don't give, you don't get, right? And also controlling the deal flow and your own destiny a little bit, understanding again the clients, is a very, 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 very big part for us. But I would say like the most successful deals, especially the large enterprise, we would usually have 3 to 4 partners on the deal. I'm not talking about how we get the lead. That's it's kind of like a lot of partners, but a lot of our development, and we want to double down on those. But once we start implementing, the client, it's usually we would have a technological partner, like a big alliance, like Google, Microsoft, right? Then we would have a strong data warehouse partner like Snowflake in that. But then we would have a implementation partner like Deloitte or Revolt BI or Actum or Questa partners, like who do the work. And usually the best scenario is when we have one more, like software partner who has a special application that actually is hard to connect with everything else and runs on Keboola. and then it's a gone scenario.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Looking back at where you are as an organization, not necessarily when you hired Ollie, when would have been the right time to hire Ollie?
I actually think that right time to hire Ollie as a CRO is coming now. If we would have hired Ollie as a CRO 3 years ago, it would have failed miserably.
Okay.
Because we were not ready internally. We, to your original questions, why don't you see, why only now you are seeing startups from Central East Europe? We are very tech focused. But there is a difference between technology, product, go-to-market, customer service, right? And if Ollie would have come 3 years ago, the resistance of the organization to sales would be so huge. Because like tech people, we think that if you build a better mousetrap, and that's a fallacy, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have the product, and you have the around that, right? Just forgot the English word. Sorry about it. But like you have a tangible product, technology, and you have intangible layers. Mm-hmm. And go to market and customer service are intangible. But if you are a technological person, you just tend to discount those. You think that the code matters, right? It does, right? But if Ollie would come 3 years ago, I would say that now we don't have discussions on the leadership level if it's good to sell or not. 3 years ago, we literally had discussions like, oh, okay, yeah, let's build this feature and this feature. Like prior to now, our discussions are very balanced with how do we go to market / what features and product we actually build, right? But back then, the only thing we wanted to talk about was about tech, right? And I think it's just a phase. And could we have had accelerated that? I believe we could. It would be probably very painful for us particularly, but I would not recommend every company to go the same way as we have done. Mm-hmm. I think that's like understanding that you are building a business and that kind of like understanding that if you want to, I think that if you decide to scale the business, you are ultimately giving some control away. And that's a scary thing. Yeah. So
obviously, it's very interesting that you're going through that transition of a tech to a sales kind of mindset business. What are you going through right now? So you're going through a bit of an ambitious growth. So what does the next 4 or 5 years look like for Keboola?
So as you said in the beginning, as I said, my mission now is to hire the best global team ever, and that's it. For me, because now we started to hire, right? And you guys have been a big part of it. Thank you. And we actually, again, coming back to Central Eastern Europe, we like to test things, understand things, make sure that what we say is actually true, before we start, And now we have tested, we can work for the biggest companies in the world, largest ones, that it's successful, that it's 10-1, better than anything else. And it gave us a big confidence to hire really the best people in the world. And so for us, right now, it's next 12 months is to really not only have Ollie, that's great, but hire the best VP level, right? It's not only about skills. For us, if you have company have been together for 6, 7, 8 years, you need to really look for cultural fit as well. And so, for example, that's why we got together with people from Ray Dalio who built the open meritocracy culture for him, who are now helping us, with this. How do you, like make it together, right? So that's a huge, huge thing, because we can't do it like we used to do it. My role changes. I'm like, until last year, like literally all deals went through me. No? Last 6 months, we have new deals that I have not been part of. It's great. It's what you need. I think Jason Lemkin said that until 6 million, like founders sell, and then we are now over 10 million. So, like everything like starts there. So scaling the organization globally, and when I say globally, our first, 2 theaters are UK, Ireland, and North, plus next year US, is a huge thing. So it doesn't break. And of course, on the product and technology, it's a huge shift we've seen last 9 months with the LLMs, and we are really excited about that. Remember, as I said, we when we drew the Wordly map, we kind of like were thinking about these automations using AI in the data platform. We thought they would be here earlier again, but and then when we saw GPT-1 was like, but it has a potential, and now it's here. So we do a lot of that. But it's not only about our platform. It's about how the whole world changes. We are literally we have entered the 4th industrial revolution. It changes like every revolution, everything. If you think about businesses as processes and the economy as processes of processes, like before the 1st industrial revolution, the engine that was running the processes was people, right? Like muscles. Then it was steam, electricity, and now it's literally the AI. So this changes again everything, and we are here, to help the companies to really. Our original mission was, like the world is moving to algorithm, and we are the backbone for it. Now we make it shorter, like automate business processes with AI, right? And I think that like next 2-3 years are really gonna show us how the humanity is gonna look like for the next 100 years. And I know everybody talks about it, but it's just like we are living in it. We are seeing how companies and still we are not able to say what's gonna happen. And some of the advancements are just incredible. I know, like now Claude, you can put 200,000 tokens in it, so the whole book. Wow. But 2 months ago, Microsoft have published a paper where they actually, proved that they can build a LLM which can have a prompt size 1 trillion tokens. We as humans, we actually read only 1 to 2 billion. Sorry, I'm like I always recount the US So like 10 to the power of 9 tokens, and we as humans, we actually read only 1 to 2 billion words in our entire life. Wow. So like now we have our auto GPT, multiple agents. Do we need them in 1 year when the big net is there, long net they call it, and all of that. So that's a huge revolutionary shift, and I think we are very well positioned because like for the AI to work, you need to actually automate the data platform, because if you are relying on people, just like you can't handle the volume of data jobs.
I think you're tapping into very much a conversation that we had with Jeremy Burton on the previous show, which is technologists are light speeds ahead of technology development, but the industry isn't.
So
exactly. There's no point overdeveloping because at the moment the customers aren't ready for it, right? So why did you choose to launch in EMEA or Europe before the US?
Good one. Honestly, because we were out of the EMEA. Right. So for us, our original thinking was we had customers in the US since the beginning, but for us it was kind of like we want to test in Central Eastern Europe, and it's been Europe is very complex, right? You have a different jurisdiction, different data governance. Like Germany is different than Switzerland, GDPR. So if you can make it work here, again, our nature, prove it, right? Technologically and lawyerishly and governance, right? Here it will work everywhere, right? And so so that's why we did it. We then tested it very shortly in UK, and then we started actually US before Corona, and then came Corona, so we had to actually regroup, right? And now we want to go really big on the US as well, because we see it's really, really, really ripe there. But I would say European businesses are differently built than the US ones, and in many instances it's not an advantage. In our world, we believe it's an advantage, because if you can do GDPR and every jurisdiction in Europe, it's very trustworthy, right? And you can then apply that. And we work with data. It's very sensitive. It needs to work.
So how did you know that Ollie Krebs was the right CRO for you?
Oh, thank you. We've worked with Ollie for a year as a consultant. We are little jerks, inside Keboola. We like to make fun, we are trolls, and we are very open, like people would say sometimes, like very open. A lot of people don't fit in that. And we worked with Ollie for a year. First, when he first came, we were like, oh, yeah, we've seen that before, a guy from a big company, right? But he's so funny, he's so open, he's so nice, yet he knows literally everything about what there is about building high performance sales teams. And so we looked around, we did a lot of, tests, we like data, so we like to, things. And we kind of established that there's probably 200 to 500 people on this position globally on the same level as Ollie. But we're like, well, we talked to some people who know us, and it's like, guys, there's probably only 30 people that will be able to work with you and you with them. And we're like, oh, we're so lucky, And so more and more we started to work with Ollie, more and more it worked, And so the whole company started to have more trust in Ollie and enjoy working with him. The thing about Ollie is he's very systematic. He thinks in networks, he thinks in patterns. He has done it all. He, when he was young, he was a DBA admin. He actually worked at Sparkasse in Hamburger. He took them to Oracle. He always says, oh, I don't understand tech. Oh, that's bullshit. He understands everything. But then he worked at sales, project management, running it. So he's very hands-on. And that's one of the values, that in Keboola we really, really value, people who don't just talk about the moon, but who actually visited the moon, right? So that's why we think it's gonna be awesome, and that's why it's gonna work.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you for that question.
Yeah, it's a very, very exciting journey. I think this is where we really have to reflect on, what we've heard, because if I was to kind of just summarize, it's almost been kind of if you were to kind of think about the various stages of the evolution of a company, you can kind of see the different stages that you've gone through. But what I think is really interesting, and what I'm hoping that a lot of founders will kind of get from listening to this, is that at every stage you had to make a pivot. Mm-hmm. You kind of get to the first stage, and the first strategy or the first mindset isn't the one that's going to really serve you. But the reason why you've been able to navigate across that is because your mindset was always understanding what's next, but also putting the customer at the center of everything that you did. And so as you navigated the organization to the various iterations, you can kind of see how you're really working that and the process that you're going through. And I think, where you are as a business, you've been very, very patient, where a lot of companies maybe would have tried to sell earlier. You knew where you were, you knew where the market is and where it isn't. and you've bought yourself enough time to ensure that you're peaking at the right time. And I think this is why Keboola at the moment are on such an amazing trajectory. You're about to go through some very ambitious growth, as we've kind of alluded to, but the timing is right. And I just want to say a big, thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, really, really insightful, and thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.
Guys, thanks for having me. It's been really a pleasure. I love the environment. I love your podcast. By the way, I have a Yuval, Harari and you now in my podcast. So thanks. And it's a great summary.
So to all our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you like what you've heard, again, please do subscribe to our various channels, iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. All the links are in the description below, and we look forward to welcoming you back for another session soon. Thank you.